Was it a bad move for Ant to call out Kyrie?
Of course it was, without question. I mean, that's something that I have been alluding to coming into this series for the last few days. Wendy, Legs, is what I was saying. I was like, Kyrie, we love Ant-Man. I think he's the new face of the NBA. I think he's a superstar blossoming before our very eyes, and I think he's going to deliver a championship to Minnesota one day, if not this year. I just think that highly of him. But I was like, yo, you be careful what you wish for. I was on Countdown the other day. Be careful what you wish for. I was on First Take that to be careful what you wish for. I was on my podcast. Be careful what you wish for. This is not the dude that you want to do that to. This magician on the offensive side of the ball, who, by the way, came into the game one last night, averaging 1.6 points per game in the first quarter. 19 points in 12 playoff games in the first quarter. I like, this ain't the dude you don't want to do this. Not him. Not Kyrie. This brother that can dance on anybody, the nastiest, handling the game with a three-point shot. I mean, you had like 22 players averaging 20 or better in the postseason, and Kyrie is the leading three-point shooter amongst them at 44%. We know the handle's nasty. We know his ability to finish at the basket. We know his creativity as an offensive magician. By the way, if he really, really wants to mess with you, we know about his movement without the basketball. Whatever needs to be done on the offensive side of the ball is something this brother is capable of doing. And I just looked at Anthony Edwards and I'm like, I believe in you, bro. You're going to be a champion one day. I know how great you are, but you sure this was the right thing to do? And then Kyrie comes out there with the aggression, which is obviously why he was only averaging 1.6 points in the first quarter, because he hadn't been aggressive. He was willing to defer to Luka, defer to Derrick Jones getting him involved, defer to a P.J. Washington, bringing those young fellas along and letting everybody know, when it's time, trust me, I'll handle it for you. But when Anthony Edwards did that, I said, look out. And sure enough, within the first few minutes, when you saw him with his aggression, I said, damn. That's what happened. We saw it coming. Anybody that knows basketball knew what was coming, and Kyrie delivered. 24 points in the first quarter.
This is what we love about. This is what we love about the playoffs. We love this back and forth. We love this interplay among star players. But I think it kind of undersells the fact that Kyrie was going at Ant. I think it undersells just what he did in this game last night, because Kyrie is a veteran player now. He is a completely different guy than he was 7 years ago when I last covered him in the conference finals, Stephen A. This guy is different in mind, body, and spirit. I almost can't believe it. I'm almost, a little bit, is this really real? And I'm watching it up close here in Minneapolis, and I'm saying, I think it might be. And what I'm talking about is, when this game started, the Mavericks were a little bit jittery. So were the Wolves, okay? It's a conference finals game. I know that some of their guys have experience, but it's jittery. Everything feels bigger, okay? And also, Minnesota came out, and they're a great defensive team. And nobody knows what game plans are going to be to start series. It's always like a guessing game. And so they came out, and they were hugging the three-point line. They were like, we are going to not allow the Mavericks to get going on the perimeter. And so Kyrie read the game. Yes, I do think he wanted to come out and try to send a little message to Ant, but he read the game. He read that his teammates and the strategy was open for him to go to the basket and get those paint attacks and get those floaters in his game, and that was so important. And one thing I'll say about Ant, it was Kobe Bryant's third or fourth title when he made the famous thing, the job's not done, okay? When they were ahead in the series and he goes, the job's not done. Kobe didn't feel that way when he was 22. Ant is 22. So Ant is learning that when you win a second-round game, even if it's Game 7, even if it's the biggest win your franchise has had in decades, the job is not done. And I think Stephen A. and Legs, Ant was stunned at the energy that it took to play in this game last night. He was exhausted at the end of the game. He admitted it. He didn't understand the intensity from series to series. A great learning experience for him, but a reminder, the job was not done.
Yeah, look, Stephen A., Wendy, I don't think it's ever a good idea. So, Stephen A., to your point, I thought the same thing when I heard it. I'm sitting there, I saw that live when it happened, and I said, wow, that's interesting and that's different. to use another player's name. Like, you say his name. It's not even like, hey, I'm going to be ready for the next team. You said a specific player's name. And Kyrie Irving, I thought the funniest thing in that exchange with Charles and those guys was, he said, I'm just sitting at home with my family, minding my business, and all of a sudden I hear my name. And his ears picked up. And he has been less aggressive early in games than he was last night, certainly. And I think here's what it comes down to. Kyrie Irving is a guy that this is one of the greatest finishers for a guard his size at the rim that this league has ever seen. And man, was it on full display last night early, because he wasn't settling for tough step back jumpers over length. He was downhill in the paint with his creativity, shifting hands, getting his body into the shot blocker's chest, getting the and ones. He did so much offensively. I think to settle Dallas down, to Wendy's point, if Kyrie Irving is even 10% less aggressive in the first half, they might go in down 10, down 12. The whole game may have felt different to the Dallas Mavericks when they come out of the locker room for the second half. Instead, what was it, I think a 3-point game maybe at halftime? That was all because of Kyrie. And now you put it in the hands of the best closer, maybe in the league, period, but certainly that's left in the postseason, in Luka Doncic. And he was the guy that settled matters in the fourth quarter with 15 points.
So now Minnesota's lost home court. Do you feel like, Windy, the Wolves are in trouble after a Game 1 loss?
No, because first off, I never, ever, ever overreact to Game 1. That's something you learn over years being around playoff series. I also think that Minnesota, their game plan is going to need some tweaks. They were not ready for what they got from Dallas, and there's a bunch of X's and O's I could go over with the big men pick and roll actions. I'm not going to focus on that. What I'm going to focus on is the trap that Dallas set, and that was to pack that paint and dare the Wolves to shoot threes. They shot 49 three-pointers. They had not shot that many in any game this year. Ant Edwards took 4 shots inside the paint. 4. This is one of the best finishers and drivers in the league. They totally baited him in to shooting those threes. His average shot distance was almost 23 feet. That is a huge victory for the Mavericks, and it was very basic. They just put all these guys standing elbows in boxes. It's old school. Legs, Stephen A., you guys, you know this from the 90s. You don't have the guys leave the lane. And if that means you give up some three-pointers, like early in that game, Jaden McDaniels was hitting some threes and Kyle Anderson was hitting some threes, okay. They'll give up some of those threes to keep that lane tight to make Ant Edwards see 2 bodies or 3 bodies he has to beat. So that's the big adjustment. This is a historic thing that star players have to deal with. They try to keep them out of the lane, keep them away from their strong suit. So now let's see how Ant responds. To me, it's all about the Ant response, and also there'll be some X's and O adjustments, but Ant cannot take 4 shots inside the paint. He's got to take 13, 15, 18 shots inside the paint in Game 2.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that part, Wendy. I just don't think it's limited to that. It's not just about Anthony Edwards. How about Karl Anthony Towns not shooting 9 threes? Charles Barkley and Shaq were absolutely right last night when they were talking about how, you know what, you let the defense off the hook when you shoot that many threes because there's a mismatch at every turn where it comes to him. He's a legit 6'11", 7 feet tall. You know, you got mismatches that you can take advantage of. You need to do that. And the fact is, Karl Anthony Towns, who, by the way, deserves a lot of props from the standpoint he walked into the game with the Malik Sealy jersey. The late Malik Sealy that used to play for the Timberwolves was a friend of mine, but a bigger friend of a lot of people that I know personally. Malik Sealy was one of those dudes. We love him and we miss him dearly. But Karl Anthony Towns honoring him was a very, very touching thing. But I will tell you, when you show up in that game and you launching threes, you can shoot threes from every now and then because we know you can make them. But in the same breath, your success doesn't need to be predicated completely on that when you got a mismatch that you can exploit. I think that's another thing to bring up. Jaden McDaniels played a good game. Key turnover with nearly 2 minutes left that I thought cost them the game. But for the most part, he really, really played well. I give him credit for that. Here's what I would throw in your direction, Legs, because I think it's something that needs to be said. Luka's phenomenal, as we all know. The thing about Luka, and if anybody could alter his game, you would think it would be Minnesota because of their length. Nobody rushes him. He plays at his pace, and there is nothing you could do about it. He's going to go as fast as he wants or as slow as he wants. I have never, it's rare in the day that I have seen somebody in all my years covering the NBA that dictates their own pace as successfully as Luka Doncic does. So I'll give him mad credit for that. Minnesota has to figure that out because they had no answer for Kyrie in the first half. They had no answer for Luka in the second half. And guess what? It wouldn't have even been that competitive if Dallas had knocked down more of those open threes that they had available to them. So you're Finch and the crew. You got to figure out what to do defensively. There's no question about that. And Tim Legler, I'm going to throw it to you by saying this. Kyrie Irving against Minnesota this year, averaging 35 points. It's just one game, 35 points, 52% shooting, 6 of 8 from three-point range with the 5 assists. Shot 9 of 5 of 7 yet last night when guarded by Anthony Edwards, but only shot 3 of 7. It's 43% against Jaden McDaniels. Your thoughts about this what I want to throw out. Because Luka doesn't move to the degree that a Kyrie Irving might move, is it possible that it might be better for McDaniels to chase around Kyrie and for Anthony Edwards to be on Luka, although I know he would be smaller and not as long as McDaniels? I'm wondering how you feel about that, only because Luka isn't that fast and he isn't running around that much, plus he's hobbled, he's not 100%. That might take a little bit of the exhaustion away from Anthony Edwards and add and elevate his level of energy. Tim Legler, I'm wondering what you think about that.
I love this question, Stephen A., because I was thinking about it last night during the game. I absolutely agree with you. From a personnel standpoint, that makes more sense. There's one big risk with that. Luka Doncic is incredible at drawing fouls. He's got that little up fake he does on the step back, gets you to lean, and he draws fouls. Obviously, Anthony Edwards significantly more important to keep out of foul trouble than it is Jaden McDaniels. You're right. You're going to expend less energy chasing and having to guard guys with that kind of quickness off the dribble as Anthony Edwards is expending guarding Kyrie Irving, and maybe that's why he was so tired late in the game. You'll use less of that type of energy against Luka. It's more of a physical strength wrestling match with Luka, so it's a different way in which it wears you down. I think the foul trouble is what Chris Finch would be concerned about with Anthony Edwards getting that many minutes on Luka, because he is so adept at drawing that type of contact. Look, Molly asked the question, were they in trouble now? Listen, I obviously thought they were in a little bit of trouble before the series because I picked Dallas to win this series. Now it's gone up a notch, there's no doubt, because Dallas has home court now. But I'm going to give you the reason, and Stephen A., your question leads me into this. Why did I pick him in the first place? Luka Doncic is not affected by length and quickness. He's not. Those guys that are catching those shoulders in their chest, Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Edwards, watch last night. When Luka's hitting them with that shoulder like he loves to do, those guys are giving ground, and now Luka can separate for that little lean back jumper, even in the mid-range. When Lou Dort was on him and Luka was hitting him, Lou Dort was not moving backwards. He's too strong. He was staying up in him. As a result, Luka was getting gassed. And now Luka's shooting shots fading away with a hand-on-hand. Different level of contest. Look at the shots Luka made in the fourth quarter last night. He got separation against guys that are significantly lighter.